How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to be doing my Enhancement Shaman PvP guide for TBC. Before we get started, I just kind of want to show you the template of everything that I'm going to be talking about. That way, if you are trying to flip through the video and you want to get to a specific spot in the video, like you don't really care about spec macro stuff earlier on, and you kind of want to fast forward, you can kind of see the template in which I'm going to be discussing things, so you can use that as a guideline on, where you want to jump around in the video. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. There's a bunch of different specs that I've tried for Enhancement Shaman, but I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm always going to want to take Elemental Warding, which means I'm going to put my points in sub-Elemental as opposed to sub-Resto. Sub-Resto is obviously really nice because Totemic Focus allows you to, kind of have a little more longevity, which I think isn't really a huge problem with Enhancement Shaman right now. The range on totems is obviously nice for Wind Fury, Tremor Totem, and I even believe Grounding. And Spell Hit kind of baked into your tree is really huge, but I'm feeling like Enhancement biggest weakness is surviving. And I feel like as an Enhancement Shaman, if you are not surviving like the crazy damage that you need to, people aren't really going to want to play with you. So you fight mages in every single bracket. If you play fives, you're going to fight a bunch of elemental shamans. Elemental warding just kind of seems mandatory. Rogue mage is super popular. Mages in general are pretty popular, so this feels pretty good. Right now, I've decided to take extra range on Earthbind Totem just to help you get kited a little bit less. This is flexible if you want Call Flame, probably not that big in PvP. If you want Convection, not the end of the world. And I actually decided to take 5 points in reverb here, which I was just testing out. I think eventually I'm going to go back down to 3 points in reverb and put the extra 2 in Unleashed Rage. But checking out my enhancement tree right here, we got full block because the mana is kind of irrelevant. Obviously, you need instant Ghost Wolf, crit to get to Flurry. Guardian Totems, people think isn't really that great, but 2 seconds off Grounding Totem is huge. I would always recommend 5 out of 5 toughness. I think that Enhancement Shaman's weakness is also being kited, so you want to make sure that those slows are reduced on you and you can get faster to your opponents. Improved weapon totems I don't think is that big of a deal, and I'll talk about later in the video, but I actually use rank 1 Wind Fury totem quite a bit. Just for efficiency and just to make sure my warrior has the buff as opposed to trying to constantly max rank it. But I don't think the AP is that big of a deal. I think the extra swing for rage generation is much more important. And then these talents are all super important. A lot of people ask me, can you take away hit from dual wield specialization? Because I think you only need 4% melee. This is just such a high value talent because 1 talent for 2% hit. And on top of that, you still miss a lot of white swings. So you're not going to miss your storm strikes, but you do still miss a lot of white swings. And you really just, it's free damage. So I like maxing all this stuff out, and I will take those 2 points out of reverb to put into to Unleashed Rage. So this is my personal favorite spec. I think Elemental Warding is really good, and I decided to go away from Nature's Guidance. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but if you want to start like going for spell hit gems potentially, or enchant, or maybe even like the second Terakar ring where you get a little bit of spell hit, it's not a terrible idea. It's got Resil spell hit, but yeah, I don't really want to lose too much offensive stats, so I just kind of deal with it. It's such a short cooldown anyway, excuse me. So let's go ahead and jump into the macros here. I really don't use too many crazy macros on Enhancement Shaman. I think the ones that are probably going to be most interesting is just the weapon swap ones. So I have 2 weapon swap macros. One allows me to go from dual wield to shield with 1 press. Super simple, super easy. This is the one right there. So shield first, then offhand, then main hand. I don't know why this is the order, but this is what I have to do with it. And then I can use this macro to immediately swap to my 2-hander in the same sense. So if I have shield on, I go to 2-hander, then 2-hander goes to shield, and vice versa. I could kind of bounce around with just 2 keybinds. So these are the macros. Item 17 is offhand, 16 is main hand. Place your weapons there. Drink macro to cancel Bob, kind of irrelevant. Focus Purge, pretty standard stuff. I use Arena Shock 1, 2, 3. Also pretty standard stuff. Focus Earth Shock. I use rank 1 Earth Shock because if I'm not attacking them as my main target, I just want to save mana. We'll talk about down ranking a little bit later. Target Arena 1, 2, 3. Focus Arena 1, 2, 3. These scripts right here show my debuffs. Show additional debuffs on the raid frames if you guys ever wondered how I do that. Start attack on my Storm Strike. Stop casting for my Earth Shock. This is actually a pretty good one. You want to make sure that you, well, actually not that important for Enhanced. I think that was Ellie. Rank 1 Earth Shock. The weapon sync macro, there's a lot of people talk about this. I don't use it in PvP, but if you know anything about weapon syncing. Blood Fury with on use. Don't always use Blood Fury, so I have them bound separately as well. I can use it without that. This right here, I think, is shows numbers over nameplates. Oh, this puts you at the bottom of your arena frames. So yeah, not really too many macros on the Shaman. I think the weapon swap macros are probably the ones that you're most likely going to be looking for. Going to add-ons, I'm only going to talk about the ones that I actually use for PvP. So Atlas Loot is irrelevant, Attune is irrelevant, Details is irrelevant, Gather Mate 2, very important if you're a miner, but irrelevant. So Item Rack is pretty nice. Item Rack, as you can see right here, it shows what my offhand is. Sometimes I got kind of stuck without realizing what offhand I have on. So if you hold Alt left click, makes all the stuff show up, so you can tell. Easy to swap your slots as well as PvE to PvP gear. So like, for example, these are PvP. Go to PvE. Easy swap. You could have sets made. Super simple. Pretty simple in terms of add-ons. Let me see if there's anything else. LFG bulletin board. It's not really a PvP add-on, but it helps you filter your world chat. Omnibar, pretty standard one. If you guys ever see like enemy cooldowns on my action bar, it's right here. Test it. Gets all that to show up. Weapon swing timer is right here, but that's a PvE one. Not really a PvP one, but if you are interested. So, kind of one of the things I like about Classic is it's pretty simple. Not really too many crazy macros, not really too many crazy add-ons. We're going to talk about gearing, how I think you should gear, because I feel like gearing right now is a little bit awkward, and what I think your stat priority is. So, first of all, in PvP, you obviously want resilience and stam. I think it's super important to have resilience and stamina in PvP. So if you can actually see, I'm like fully gemmed resilience here. And the only thing that for the most part I'm ignoring is if there's a set bonus with a resilience, I'm not going to go full resil. So basically, you know, I could go 8 resil here, but I feel like it's kind of worthless since there's a resil bonus. And then in the chest piece for critical strike rating, I don't really care. So I'm going to put blue gems in there to make my meta work. But once again, I skip the crit stuff and I go for the resil bonuses. So resil bonus here. I was going to do resil here anyway, so we kind of get free hit rating there. But resilience and stamina are definitely very big. So you guys can see I have 375 resilience, and I have 9,359 HP. I'm using the stamina on legs. If you want to use the AP, you can. Minor run speed stamina on boots. 15 strength to gloves. I'm kind of talking about enchants right now as well as gems, so we're kind of getting into all this right now. But 12 strength on bracers, better than 24 AP in case you ever get kings. I do in 5. Spell pen on cloak, I'm actually a big fan of. Over agility. If you want to get agility, you can, but you really would like your Urshocks not to resist. Obviously, shoulder enchant from Aldor or Scryers, whichever one you have. I'm currently using the Cenarian Expedition helm enchant for the hit rating. If you only have lower city reputation, you can use that one as well. It just gives intellect instead of hit rating. And it actually gives strength over attack power, which is also technically better if you have kings, but I think the hit rating outweighs that. Resilience on chest. For weapons, you obviously want double Mongoose. I have Crusader in my offhand because this one is going to get replaced at some point, so I don't think it's worth dropping the money for Mongoose. For shield, I have Resilience. And then for two-hander, I actually have Savagery. And the reason I have Savagery on two-hander is I think it's one of those rare situations where you're not really going to have two-handed uptime that much. So you kind of just want to hit as hard as, you know, as often as possible, and you don't really want to rely on the Mongoose proc because you're probably not going to have it at the right time. So I think Savagery on the two-hander. I think that kind of covers all the enchants. I would say that, you know, the ones I talked about are a little bit negotiable. You could do spell hit on your gloves if you really want as well. But for the most part, I would stick to everything I'm using. Now, in terms of how to get gear, it's really interesting. So Horde are in a unique position right now where getting honor gear is kind of tough. Even if it's Alliance, it's kind of tough, I would say, just because it takes a while. I think that getting resilience gear from PvE is actually a better option first. And what I mean by that is you want to look for PvE gear with sockets or like any like random pieces with a resilience, as long as it's not like super unfavorable. So for example, I was actually using this chest piece for a very long time. Black Morass, second boss, drops a chest piece with 3 gem slots. Super good. I just put triple resilience in that, and then boom, that's a chest with 24 resilience compared to what I have. This chest piece has 26 resilience on it, so obviously the Gladiator one's much better, but you know, you're kind of putting your foot in the door, and I think gearing from PvE is actually a better option. You can actually see, like right now, I'm still using PvE gloves. If I wanted to, for example, this belt could have double resilience gems in it, so I kind of feel like going for socketed gear to PvP with is actually a really good option. There's also what I would recommend for like some starter PvP gear is the gear from Terracore Forest from Spirit Shards, which are pretty easily farmable. This ring, which I'm still using today, 11 resilience on it. This helmet is a great starter helmet. The 24 strength one right there, it's got 13 resilience on it, has a meta socket. So pretty pretty decent starter piece. I have some gear written down here. These are set pieces that all have, for the most part, like some sockets on it. Although I will say, if you're taking Beast Lord from a hunter, I would recommend not doing that. Beast Lord's really good for hunters, so if you're against hunters on the roll, I would say you should probably pass that to hunter. But yeah, Waste Walker, Desolation, Assassination, and Beast Lord are all very good socketed pieces. Some are leather. It's not the end of the world. I would just make sure you're going for those first. There's also a very good PvP necklace that has resilience on it from the Key to Arcatraz quest chain, if you wanted to look that up. So Arcatraz right here. This is the quest chain. It starts in Netherstorm. That's the one. That's the one. Gives either a spell damage neck, a melee neck, or a healer neck, so all pretty good options there. You can also try and get holo tokens and whatnot, but I think in Aggran, I think holo stuff is way more difficult to get. In terms of actually buying honor, like if you're trying to figure out what to spend your honor on, never spend it on a weapon. Do not buy weapons. The PvE weapons are like almost just as good, as well as the blacksmithing weapon. I had the blacksmithing weapon in my bag, and even if you're like, Sea-Doo, I can't do the blacksmithing, like I don't have the gold, then I would recommend trying to farm something from Karazhan if possible, and also Heroic Shattered Halls. That has an epic weapon right there, Blade Fist, and even if you don't have that, you also have the chance at Demon Blood Eviscerator. Like, the blue level 70 weapons are as good as the PvP weapons. It's not worth the honor. As a matter of fact, I would try not even buy, unless you're farming a ton of honor. I know I have 2 pieces of blue gear. I would stick with the epic stuff. I think the boots and the belt are very, very solid. Neck and bracers are also very solid. Even the cloak, pretty solid. I would try and stick with those. I can't tell you in what order to get them exactly. I would just try and fill in the gaps of what your gear is. Let's say you have a really good pair of boots. I know a pair off the top of my head here. So like right here, let's just say you have these and you just put some Resil gems in it. Don't buy the PvP boots. You know what I mean? These are going to hold up for now, for example. So, just try and fill in the gaps of what you can. And, just if you're a serious PvPer, just put Resil gems and Stam gems, stuff like that in the PvE gear to try and get your foot in the door, so at least you're not getting absolutely rocked with no Stam, no Resil when you go into PvP. So we talked about gems, we talked about enchants. This is also another really popular question I get. What totems, I don't know why I typed it like an idiot, what totems you don't need? What totems do you not need? And this is a really awkward one, because I feel like people look at Shaman and they're like so overwhelmed by the amount of actual abilities that you have that it gets a little crazy. So we're gonna go over the totems that I don't really use often. Maybe I even have them keybound, but yeah. So from a PvP standpoint, I mean, I do use Fire Nova, Magma Totem, and Searing Totem, so I would recommend keeping those. Also, from a PvP standpoint, I really don't use Stoneclaw. Maybe there's more use of what I can get out of it. Maybe like try and taunt pets or something, but I don't use Stoneclaw often. It's great in like world situations where you're trying to get mobs off you and stuff, so I would recommend having keybound. I wouldn't say don't ever use it. I don't actually currently have fire resistance keybound. I'm not going to say I recommend it, but I really don't use it often. I ran into a triple Palm Pyro team the other day where I literally tried to spellbook my fire resist totem to get it down before they ran in. And they ran in, they triple Palm Pyro before I got it off, so unfortunate. Flame Tongue Totem is pretty useless. I actually do a Frost Resist Totem down because Frost Mages are super popular. Grace of Air is obviously good for PvE. From a PvP standpoint, you're probably not going to really use it. So if you're only a PvPer, which I kind of doubt, you don't really use Grace of Air that often. You're probably going to, have Wind Fury down for the warriors you play with. If you're not playing with a warrior, and let's just say you're playing with casters, you probably want Wrath of Air down for your healer and your caster. And then also keep in mind, you got to constantly swap your totems between grounding totems, so it's not super easy to do that. I wouldn't recommend not binding Grace of Air, but you probably won't use it that much. Nature Resist Totem I never use. Stone Skin Totem is actually a totem that's actually pretty good, but I noticed myself not being able to use it very often just because the only time I really see myself wanting to use it is versus rogues. Most rogues play with Priest, in which case you're going to need Tremor Totem down instead of the Stone Skin, so it gets a little bit awkward. Strength to Earth is pretty good if you don't need Tremor Totem. Wind Fury, obviously, you're going to use anytime you have a Warrior or Ret Paladin in your group. Windwall Totem, I never use. You could take Windwall Totem off your bar. It is not relevant. Healing Stream Totem is definitely good in some situations. Disease Cleansing Totem only has one use and one use only, and that's if you're fighting against a Priest that uses Devouring Plague. That's the only disease in the game I think you could take off in a PvP situation, so I have it keybound for that unique situation only. Tranquil Air Totem you might use in Rage. You definitely don't use it in PvP. Poison Cleansing Totem versus every single rogue team. Super good. Mana Spring Totem if there's no rogue on the other team, so you can give Mana Spring to your healers as well as yourself. And I don't even think I have Sentry Totem learned right now. So if you can remember all that, or if you want to rewind, there's definitely a couple totems that you don't need keybound. Maybe save you some keybinds. You don't need Cure Disease, by the way, if you have the totem bound. And you might not even need Cure Poison bound if you have the totem bound. The only situation, it actually is a little bit cheaper on mana, I didn't realize. But the only situation I would ever use Cure Poison is if it was someone out of group. Because Poison Cleansing will actually get him otherwise. But generally speaking, if you're trying to cleanse, use Poison Cleansing over actual cleanse because it's a 0.5 second global faster. So I don't know if you know this or realize this, but totems are a 1 second global. You can see the difference in globals here. The totem global is obviously way faster. Your regular globals are, you know, 1.5. If you fight against a priest or warrior, Tremor Totem down at all times. Preferably actually like behind pillars or in spots where, you know, they can't kill it immediately. They'd have to kind of like walk around to kill it. If you're playing with a warrior rep paladin, Wind Fury down at all times. Besides when you're grounding, then you obviously swap back to it. If you're fighting against a rogue, Poison Cleansing Totem down as much as possible. Other than that, I would say, you know, Mana Spring for your healers is pretty big. And if you're fighting against a Warlock, you could get a little freaky and put a healing stream down if you feel like they're kind of killing your whole team. But I would say for the most part, Mana Spring probably better for your healers. And that really only leaves us with Fire. And Fire is Frost Resistance Totem, which is pretty good versus mages if you want to use that. Or Searing Totem, basically, which is kind of good for knockback and things like that. So yeah, Warlock, Priest, Warrior, Tremor Totem down. If you're not fighting Warlock, Priest, or Warrior, you're probably going to, you know, switch between like Earthbind and Strength of Earth for the extra AP. If you don't have like a Warrior or something on your team, like I played Warlock, Resto Druid at one point. I played Wrath of Air. But yeah, totems I think are pretty easy. For the most part, I would say like the most common mistakes that even I make with totems is if you drop an Earthbind to slow someone, make sure you redrop that Tremor if you need to. If you drop a Grounding Totem, make sure you redrop that Wind Fury if you need to. At the start of every game, you kind of want to drop as many totems as possible. Just keep in mind versus rogue teams, you're probably not going to be able to drop all 4 totems before they open. So if there's a priest on the team, you probably want to drop like Tremor, you know, Poison Cleanse and Wind Fury or whatever, and then go Ghost Wolf. This isn't, I don't really know what this would go under. Maybe utility, but if you're fighting against a rogue team and you're Ghost Wolf, you can't get sapped. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. So super important to start Ghost Wolf versus rogue teams if possible. So Shaman utility. So Shaman utility is, besides like their kind of crazy burst, is probably one of the only reasons you're going to join an arena game on your Enhancement Shaman. It feels like when I play my Enhancement Shaman, I use more of a utility game as opposed to a damage game. I would say a lot of games, I'm a Purge bot, I'm an Interrupt bot, and then when I have that opportunity to connect, that's when I try and connect. So your utility is Purge, Kick, which is Urshock. You have the lowest cooldown interrupt in the game. Grounding, Tremor, Bloodlust, which we'll kind of talk about later, and I would say Poison Cleansing. So as an Enhancement Shaman, I really like grouping with Priest. One thing that you're going to want to get in the use of is spamming Poison Cleansing. If a rogue has pressure and you have Bloodlust, press that Poison Cleansing totem 5 times in a row, and your healer is going to love you. It's boom, 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 boom. You're just ripping off wound poisons like a band-aid, bro. Here's Bloodlust. Watch this. Ready? Watch these globals. -1 wound, -2 wound, -3 wound, -4 wound, -5 wound. Right there, no more Mortal Strike for that rogue. Obviously, it costs a decent chunk of mana, but in those situations, you get mana back from Water Shield, you get mana back from Shamanistic Rage, and Poison Cleansing Totem is one of the things that I realized is super crucial on Enhancement Shaman. Rogues are obviously very popular, and you definitely want to be Poison Cleansing versus any rogue team, especially when they have pressure. If they don't have like a ton of momentum, you could try and, keep purging to be offensive. So Purge is one of the ones where it doesn't really, from my point of view, feel like there's a bad time to Purge. I would say, generally speaking, if I have mana and the enemy that I want to kill has buffs, I'm using Purge. Every single time. I can't think of a situation where I don't Purge. I actually sometimes find myself in situations where I literally won't use Shock or Storm Strike just because I'm Purging so hard. But in the same sense, like if I'm fighting against like a Resto Druid or something, and I'm trying to Purge Haas, and I feel like, he's kind of pushing up to get for CC, I do have to hold my global for Shock, which is something that you need to do. Obviously, Urshock is your main interrupt. I would say you probably want to use Urshock the most out of any of your other shocks. It's good to kick anything. You can kick Frostbolt, you can kick Polymorph, you can kick Cyclones, you can kick Entangling Roots. If someone's casting, you probably want to Urshock it. It's pretty good. And then with Reverb, for the most part, some points in there. A very common rotation is the the classic shock, ground, shock. It kind of throws people off a bit. You know, mage casting poly, you shock it. Mage casting poly, you ground it. And then he's like, oh, shit, you know, he ground, like, he's still not poly. Then he casts again. He doesn't realize shock's actually going to be off CD. It's really good. Definitely want to make sure you're rotating that, and just never forget when you use grounding, you're always going to need to replace it with whatever air totem you have down. If it's not Wind Fury, if it's not a warrior, I wouldn't worry about it too much, but you definitely want to make sure when you ground, after that grounding goes away, you replace it immediately or as fast as you can with the Wind Fury totem. It's pretty simple stuff. I try not to use Frost Shock unless I'm like really chasing someone hard, but it does get a little bit awkward because if you're chasing a druid or if you're chasing a mage and you do use a Frost Shock, they could turn around and be like, okay, he's got no shock available, so I'm going to cast a Polymorph, or I'm going to cast a Cyclone, stuff like that. And generally speaking, if you're chasing something like that, you kind of want to make sure you have grounding as a backup. Otherwise, you can just get CC'd for free. So, you know, if you decide to Frost Shock a mage, make sure you have grounding so he can't just be like, okay, I'm going to sheep you, you're an idiot. You make him look like an idiot by him standing there casting the sheep, you ground it, then you walk up and you just hit him with the fattest Storm Strike that's ever existed. So yeah, for Shaman utility, just try and keep poisons off your healers or DPS if they need it. Try and interrupt as much as possible. Earth Shock is a huge, huge interrupt because it's such a short cooldown. Try and ground, you know, value spells. A lot of people ask me, what do you ground? And the reality of it is Shock is such a short cooldown, ground such a short cooldown, ground anything. If you see a Frostbolt, if you see a freaking Immolate, you know, if you see a Mana Burn, use as often as you can, stop them. You know, you want to be as disruptive as possible. That's kind of your benefit. So in terms of damage, Enhancement Shaman is unbelievably simple. Probably why it gets some of its hate, but you literally Storm Strike and you shock. That's all it is. It's very rare where in PvP I actually do use Fire Nova Totem. You can try and set it up with a burst if you feel like you're absolutely crushing someone, you're ahead on mana, you don't really care. I do like to keep Searing Totem down if possible, just because it does knockback, it'll eat reflex, it'll kill grounding totem, so it's actually pretty useful in that regard. But Enhancement Shaman damage is super simple. It's super simple. Storm Strike, and I want to say Storm Strike on CD and Shock on CD, but it gets a little bit trickier than that. Storm Strike on CD, if you're not purging, like if there's a bunch of buffs to purge, it's probably better. Like I wouldn't Storm Strike into a shield, for example. I'd always try and purge those first. And I guess this is where it gets a little tricky, like when do you shock for damage and when do you shock for an interrupt? And it really, it's such a difficult thing to talk about because it depends on the situation. So if I'm playing 3s and I'm playing 5s, if I have momentum and I'm ahead, I kind of want to shock for damage to ride that momentum. And it kind of feels like if I'm behind or if I'm trying to catch up, it feels like I'm not using shocks and I'm trying to play a little bit more defensive. I will say though, one thing that I've noticed is when I get forced into a shield, it feels like sometimes I don't shock ever, which is wrong. If you're forced into a shield situation, I would say it feels like the damage is actually more important because it's going to get you, it's going to be so difficult for you to get damage out that you might need to start just shocking on CD for damage. It never really feels too bad to use Earth Shock if you have grounding available as well, so that's one thing to keep in mind, but it's kind of one of those things where you just have to, I guess, get a feel for it. If you're fighting against those really pesky casters that spam CC like druids and mages, sometimes it feels really awkward to waste your Earth Shock, but sometimes you also you got to recognize that it's basically a 5-second CD and you just got to go for it. Actually, maybe it's about even here. It's really tough to say. If you're in a situation where you feel like someone else is going to cast, you can hold on to the shock. If you feel like you're in a situation where they're not going to cast, you can do it for damage. It's really hard to say. I'm trying to picture all these comps in my head here, but it's like you fight RMP and you're crushing a mage. You could shock for damage. You could shock to kick poly. You could shock to kick priest. It's a tough one. I think it's one of those things you got to feel out. I don't think there's a right answer. In terms of damage, I would probably never use Flame Shock. I just don't think it's worth it. It feels like it's the least out of the other ones. Now, in terms of healing on Enhancement Shaman, I would say in most situations your heals aren't really that great. I would try not to throw out heals unless your healer is in an interrupt or a stun and you need that situation. So I notice versus Rogue sometimes, obviously if your healer gets, you know, cheap shot into kidney, lusting and just dropping heals isn't bad. And then when they come out of that situation, you try and help them out with a couple poison cleansing totems to get that off. But your heals aren't really super effective, so it feels like sometimes it might just really not be worth it. I would say for the most part, you know, unless my healer is interrupted, I'm not casting heals. And versus rogues right now, if you guys actually play arena often, like rogues kind of slay people in stuns, so healing in those situations is definitely not bad. So how to play defensive. Shaman defensive play is super simple for the most part. If you're versus casters, you're just going to be line of sighting. And if you're versus any melee that's on you, you need a shield. Shield is absolutely important. I'm super lucky and I have Nightbane shield here. I wouldn't recommend spending arena points on the shield. I wouldn't recommend getting the honor shield. I think there's a pretty decent shield from Shadow Labs, you know, if you can't get anything else. And there's also a pretty decent shield from Exalted Shatar if you can't get anything else. But shield versus any melee that's on you and crushing you, it is very, very important. Badge of Justice shield also pretty good. This is like one of the things that I think is going to set apart enhancement shamans from other enhancement shamans. If you're fighting a rogue and you're dying, if you're fighting a warrior and you're dying, a BM hunter and you're dying, even other enhancement shamans, you need the shield on to survive. And I know it seems really awkward, but this is where you kind of got to rely on your shock damage to actually pressure people. As an enhancement shaman, you're a pretty squishy target, so that's why you need the weapon swap macros. And from a healer perspective, if you're playing with someone who kind of dies real easily, you're not really going to want to play with them again. So, you know, if you're an enhancement shaman, I would say you don't really have a guaranteed spot in this meta. You got to make sure that the people you're playing with respect you as a actual class and don't think you're a meme. So like when, you know, rogue opens on you or, you know, warrior's on you and you feel really tanky, they're gonna be like, wow, you know, this is actually not bad to heal this guy. It's not bad at all. From a defensive standpoint, Shamanistic Rage is, in my opinion, almost exclusively used as a defensive cooldown. I just call it wall. You know, 30% damage reduction is almost good as pain suppression. It's one of those things that you want to rotate. If Rogue Mage opens on me hard in the opener, most likely I'm going to Trinket and Sham Rage. If I feel like I'm getting crushed by a BM Hunter during Bestial Wrath, or, you know, Warrior during Death Wish, I throw up the Sham Rage to just kind of make it easier for my healer to heal. And generally speaking, during those cooldowns, I always have a shield up. Like, you know, if a rogue's got evasion up, and I can't hit anything else, I have a shield on. There's no reason for me to take additional damage. If a hunter BM's on me, I have a shield on. If a warrior death wish is on me, I have a shield on. I actually played Turbo Mirrors a while ago, where both teams just target the enhancement shaman the whole game, and I have a shield on the entire game. And it's okay, because, you know, your warrior's getting the pressure with Wind Fury Totem, you're still shocking on cooldown, you're actually still getting a reasonable amount of damage. But I would say that, from my point of view, when teams attack me as an enhancement, I went from feeling like a kind of a liability to going this tankier build with elemental warding and having 387 resilience with this shield on and almost 10,000 unbuffed HP to feeling like a tank. Like, when teams attack me, it actually doesn't feel bad. Just for example here, in 5v5, we're playing against a really unknown hunter. You guys probably don't know him at all. His name's Bean. You know, he's kind of just a random, so this is probably irrelevant. But we were playing against them, and they were trying to kill our mage, and it was kind of scary. They were trying to kill our priest. It was kind of scary. Every time that team went on me, I would just throw the shield on, and I would just be chilling. You know what I mean? It felt like they couldn't hurt me at all. So yeah, definitely really important. Other than that, you know, versus casters, your best friend is line of sight and shock and grounding, you know, to try and rotate in between that. But I just wanted to stress the importance of using Shamanistic Rage as a defensive cooldown, not a mana cooldown. Like, even if you're at full mana, don't feel bad about pressing Shamanistic Rage. Just make sure you're keeping Water Shield up and you shouldn't have mana issues for the most part. And yeah, shock usage, we talked about it a little bit. I would say for the most part, I almost never use Flame Shock, basically never. You can be like, yeah, well, you want to Flame Shock a rogue to, you know, prevent him from re-stealthing and stuff like that, but every time I fight against a rogue, there's a caster on the team, which means my shocks are constantly being used on CD to either stop cast or to slow someone so I can actually reconnect. So I actually basically never use Flame Shock. I think about it sometimes if I'm like attacking a warrior and there's a lot of armor, but even then it really doesn't feel that good because warriors kind of pair with like druids and priests, and I kind of need to interrupt them as well. So it's definitely super awkward. So I would say I basically only rotate between max rank Earthshock and rank 1 Earthshock, and max rank Frostshock and rank 1 Frostshock. Frostshock to either kite, rank 1, or reconnect. And then if you're ever like interrupting and you want to save mana, basically focus Earthshock, stuff like that. Basically rank 1, otherwise you're using max rank for damage. Mana management, it's pretty simple. Keep Water Shield up. You know, if you have trouble with it, get a weak R for it. If you have Water Shield up, you're never going to fully okay? There's been some points in my Enhancement Shaman matches where I'm low on mana, and I can't spam Purge, and I can't, you know, I can't spam Heal, I can't spam Poison Cleansing, but I'm never actually to the point where I can't Shock, I can't Storm Strike, you know? You're always going to be kind of unlimited in what you can do. But mana management is, you know, if you can get value Sham Rages when you use them to kind of get mana back, it's good. Obviously, it's more or less uses defensive cooldown. There's definitely some situations where I'm playing 3s or 5s and I'm not a target at all, and I'm because I was spamming Poison Cleansing and I was spamming Purge, and I'm like, yo, I'm just going to rage right now. I obviously let my healers know that I'm losing the defensive cooldown to get that mana back, but, you know, sometimes it's okay to do. So just keep Water Shield up. Another thing with mana management is I actually noticed one time where I was kind of kiting a warrior and I was just spamming max rank Frost Shock, but I wasn't actually letting him get to me. If you don't actually crit your spells with Shamanistic Focus, your melee attacks, you'll actually So that's one thing I would say, just keep in mind. Like, if you're actually just trying to kite someone a little bit, and you're not actually swinging your weapon, and you're not getting Shamanistic Focus up, you might want to down rank to, like, rank 1 Frost Shock or rank 1 Earth Shock, just for the time being, until you actually start getting your melee swings going and you start critting again. Otherwise, you can actually kind of yourself that way. This is a super interesting topic, in my opinion. Shield dual wield two-hand. I've actually, until recently, I didn't craft a two-hander. So if you watch my stream religiously every day, I crafted a Deep Thunder last night. I'm going to talk about these situations right here. So if you have a lot of uptime and you're just sitting there and you're just beating on a target, dual wield is by far going to be your most DPS. There's a team we play in 5s where I'm just basically on a priest the entire game. I'll never put on my shield. I'll never put on my two-hander. You know, I'm just kind of tearing apart. But there's also a lot of situations versus, like, even Rogue Mage, where versus Rogue Mage, I start with a shield on. It's super important. There's no reason for you not to have a shield on when the Rogue's in stealth. So let's say he opens on me or he opens on my priest. I don't actually think I want to put on dual wield. And I'll tell you why. So this is kind of untested. So I'm not going to be like, you know, get your two-handeds made right now. If you happen to get a Gorehowl or you happen to get one of the weapons from Grohl, there's one off each boss. You know, as Enhancement Shaman, roll on him and give it a try. But versus RMP, or versus any team that has, like, a lot of potential to kite or a lot of crowd control, having the ability to walk up to them and hit them for 5,000 damage immediately before you get re-CC'd or before they get more distance has a lot more value than just, you know, kind of hitting them, you know, for a little bit of damage. So the theory that I have in 5s is sometimes I can't connect on targets, and when I do, it doesn't feel super impactful. I think the best way I can explain it is having very slow pressure, almost like a Warlock, where you have that consistent damage, as opposed to like a Mage, where you're actually shattering someone for literally 5k damage, 3k Frostbolt, 2k Ice Lance, is more or less how it's going to feel. So you're taking a bigger risk by putting on a two-hander, but it's almost like a calculated risk to the point where you know you're going to get in range, and even if you have dual wield on and you do connect for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds, whatever, it's not actually going to be enough to impact the game before that Mage blinks away, before you get re-crowd controlled and things like that. Where if you actually have Deep Thunder on, and let's say you don't proc Wind Fury, it's going to net the same thing because you kind of did nothing, but they're going to get away anyway, and it wouldn't really matter, as opposed to if you walk up and you actually proc a Wind Fury and you crit, and you either literally kill him or force a cooldown, I think it has a much higher impact. So basically, long story short, uptime equals dual wield, defensive play equals shield. We talked about that a lot already. And in a world where you're getting kited quite a bit, or even, I haven't talked about this too much, or even a world where you feel like you're swapping between shields. So, like, let's just say I'm playing against Rogue Mage. Rogue Mage is crushing me. The Rogue just uses Kidney. I come out of that Kidney. I want to come out of that Kidney with a Deep Thunder on, because I've just taken so much damage. I want to see if I can actually counter pressure and get huge momentum, like, faster, if that makes sense. Like I said, it's a little bit of a risk-reward thing, but I would say for the most part, if I feel like I'm using a shield most of the game, I think I'm going to come off the shield with a two-hander as opposed to come off the shield with a dual wield. Because most likely you are going to have to put that shield back on, and I feel like getting actual, like, what's meaningful pressure is more important than kind of just, like, padding damage a little bit with a dual wield. Because I feel like if you're not having a lot of uptime with the dual wield, it's not actually going to net to, you know, the pressure that you actually need to win the game. So I'm kind of a believer in the two-hander, and believe me, when two-hand doesn't proc Wind Fury, it feels bad. It feels really bad. Let me see if I can fly up to some mobs here. So, like, right here, here's a mob. This is dual wield. You can see the damage feels pretty good. You're going to proc Wind Fury quite a bit. See what my DPS is here. 650 DPS. Second Storm Strike. And we ended up doing 641 on this guy. So he's got a little bit more armor, but we're going to attack something with a little bit less armor. But if you have the, you know, if you have the two-hander on, Look how slow it feels if you don't proc Wind Fury, right? It feels terrible. But if you do manage to connect, and then you press... Yeah, well, this just feels... Parry my Storm Strike. You know, if you do manage to connect and you get that Wind Fury, it's obviously a big risk. There was a Wind Fury there, but he died instantly. People are just going to drop. So let's just say, you know, Mage finally get to his line of sight. Press Storm Strike. We proc... is that a Wind Fury there? I saw 2 numbers pop up, but you know what I'm saying. It's a risk-reward thing. It's a bit of a gamble. I feel like my Wind Fury really doesn't proc with this two-hander. It's actually... it's kind of insane, but... I exclusively played on beta with Deep Thunder, and I got some pretty ridiculous kills. I haven't been too impressed with it yet. But on beta, all I used was Deep Thunder, and it felt really powerful. So when to lust? When to lust is a really it's a really basic thing. A lot of the times you kind of want to lust as soon as you are getting pressure, you know, when you kind of engage. But I also want to stress the fact that it's also very important sometimes to lust either as a counter lust, where a team lusts on you and you feel like you need it for your casters to start getting CC or your healers to start healing. Or just what I like to call a defensive lust. Just recognize that lust doesn't always have to be used offensively, and it's actually a very powerful defensive tool as well. Like, oftentimes in 5v5, I actually lust just to straight up, you know, give my healers more healing throughput. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, if you lose a game and you had Bloodlust available or used it late after that time where you were pressured the whole time, just think about the fact that you can, oh, two-handed feels really bad right now. Just think about the fact that you could have lusted earlier and possibly got rid of some of that pressure. Wait, do I not have... do I not have enough hit rating? I actually might not have enough hit rating for my yellows. Oh, wow, that's actually interesting. My gear is actually a little bit scuffed here, now that I think about it. I don't actually have enough hit rating for two-hander, which means the two-hander spec might have been better with Nature's Guidance, but I think that I would probably just do like this, and I think you need 3%. This puts me at 2.98, so it's probably good enough. Let me just try and proc one more Wind Fury here. Dude, I actually legitimately don't think I've seen a huge Wind Fury with my two-hander yet. It's kind of bothering me. So downranking spells, I actually have all my shocks downranked to rank 1. Like I said, I don't really use Flame Shock. That was a big hit there. So if you could do that to someone, it's going to be a bit of a feels good, man. All of my shocks are downranked to rank 1 and main rank. We kind of talked about the situations that you use those already. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have downranked, and I don't think there is, actually. I use max rank heals. There's no reason not to. I use max rank totems. Oh, okay. I talked about this a little bit. I use rank 1 Wind Fury Totem. I think that the main benefit of Wind Fury Totem for the warrior is getting the additional rage. So basically, once I've engaged in combat, I always redrop with a rank 1 Wind Fury Totem. If you're constantly dropping like this Wind Fury Totem, and then you ground, and then you gotta drop another high rank Wind Fury Totem, like, look how fast it's just chopping away your mana bar. So using the rank 1 Wind Fury Totem, you know, you can see it doesn't do nearly as much damage. You could kind of spam it all the time. If you play Resto Shaman, it's something that you could do as well. And then I'm trying to think. Everything else, I believe, for the most part, is max ranked. If you were super try hard, you could rank 1 Magma Totem to try and get rogues out of stealth. I personally am a little bit tight on keybinds. Oh, it looks like I actually have that bound. Wow, I guess I'm a super try hard. There it is, max run. Rank 1 Magma Totem. I didn't even know I had that, I'm not gonna lie. Oh wait, I actually have fire resist bound too. Wow, I said I didn't have that bound. Okay, I'm just a noob. So not too much downranking on Shaman, enhanced Shaman that is, just, you know, Wind Fury and a couple shocks. In terms of team compositions, I have to say that Enhancement Shaman Disc Priest felt really, really good. I felt like we were able to beat Hunter Healer. I felt like we were able to beat Warlock Healer. I felt like we were able to beat Priest Rogue or Rogue Healer in general. And it's going to sound kind of crazy, but Enhancement Disc Priest to me actually felt like we destroyed Disc Priest Rogue. I just kind of outlived the Rogue with a shield until he's out of evasions, and if I can connect on Priests, I can connect on Priests. I just purge all their buffs. We have double purge, so the Priest literally can't even get a single powered shield up, and I kind of just tank him with a shield until evasion's done, and I just kind of crush him. Any Mage Healer team, we absolutely annihilate. The teams that are hard as Disc Enhance is Warrior Druid and Rogue Mage. Those two comps are very difficult. In terms of threes, the best comps I've played so far are Beast Cleave with a Disc Priest and Turbo with a Disc Priest. They also do work with Resto Druid. I just think it's a little bit awkward because once you don't have defensive Dispel, you're going to start struggling into Mage teams. But Beast Cleave being Hunter Enhancement pretty good, Warrior Enhancement pretty good. I tried Warlock Enhanced Resto Druid and didn't feel bad. We actually only struggled into Warrior teams. I think it might have been better if we had a Disc Priest on our team, but either way, that comp actually felt pretty decent. And a comp I want to try in threes is Rogue Enhancement Shaman. That comp sounds like it's disgusting right now. You know, if I played with a rogue who just cheap shot, kidney shot something from me, I would literally rip their head off, glue it back on, and rip it off again. It just actually sounds like a pretty monster comp. That comp with the Disc Priest sounds really good. And even surprisingly, I played Enhancement Shaman Mage with Venruki and Borngood with a Paladin, not even a Priest. And that comp didn't feel bad. So I thought Enhancement Shaman Mage synergy was really awkward, but it's so strange because the Mage actually helps enable you do your damage so well because he kind of keeps people in place, he keeps people off of you. So I actually really liked Enhancement Shaman Mage. I really did. I really did. And in terms of 5s, we play basically one comp right now. We play, well, actually we play 2 comps. So I play Enhanced Warrior. I think with Enhancement Shaman, you definitely want a Warrior on your team if possible. We play Paladin, Priest for healers, and then we play with a Warlock sometimes, and we play with a Mage sometimes. I think personally I like the Mage comp better, but since you know, Azael was actually really undergeared, maybe the Warlock comp does feel better. Enhancement Shamans in Burning Crusade, they work. I hope this guide kind of helped you understand like what your role should be. You're definitely kind of more of a utility role. You want to make sure you're always using that utility to the best of your advantage. And yeah, I mean, the class is good in my opinion. The class is good. I would say I've had pretty good success with it. I played, you know, up to 2200 in 2s. Obviously not right here. I think I was probably queuing like, you know, high 2000s in 3s, and obviously one of the highest rated teams in 5s right now. So if you guys obviously have any questions, you're always welcome to come over to the stream and ask those questions. I'm happy to answer, but I do hope this, you know, kind of made some sense and maybe helped you out in some ways if you weren't aware of it. Oh, before in closing here, I just want to say Lightning Shield I never use. You can maybe use it in a dueling situation. I would say Water Shield probably more important most of the time. I think that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys learned something. Have a good one.
That's what they call me. I promise that you never be